Hello listeners, it's Mark here with another off-season look around the clubs. This time it's Wigan Warriors in the spotlight. A bit of a different season for them than the last club we looked at, Widnes. Wigan had an historic treble of titles in the Under-19s, the Women's Super League and of course Super League itself. Fan David Bailey will run through the lows and highs of the 2018 season. We'll have Wigan fan and journalist Tom McCooey on to go through the off-season news, including squad numbers and a possible trip to Barcelona. David's then back to look ahead to 2019, and you may be surprised with my predictions for the Cherry and Whites next year. Tom then rounds off things with a special insight into his new book, In Our Blood, which is conversations with players, heroes and fans on Wigan Warriors. We love a good book plug on SLP, especially when yours truly is one of the feature's writers, as I am in this one. So, here we go with David. Welcome to the Super League pod, David Bailey.
Hi, Mark.
Obviously, still flying high after a great champion season by Wigan, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a bit of a strange old season, as we'll go through in a little bit. But yeah, I think the grand final, even though it was sort of on the cards and with all the storylines that went behind it, it was nice to get it over the line and do it, because obviously it's played on grass, not paper, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, we are going to go through the season in different sections for the Wigan Warriors. Just a quick mention to head things up that the under-19s and the women were also champions of their competitions this year, so a great treble for Wigan, so well done to those guys too, and a great season all round for Wigan fans like me and you to celebrate. But we're not going to talk about the under-19s and the women other than to give them that nod. What I was wanting to do first is give myself a huge pat on the back, because pre-season, David, my prediction was Wigan would finish second and then win the grand final. And as it played out, Wigan finished second, then won the grand final. This is. I'm not making this up. There was a podcast episode that was out that said all this. But a few other people got in touch with us who were Wigan fans about how they thought the season went. Before we talk about what you thought about how the way the season went. So Andrew Hunt said it was beyond expectations. David Lawrenson said fantastic, emotional, rubbish, then amazing, infuriating, then sublime. Andy Barden said winning it for Wayne. Andy Curry said a season to remember, the highlights being the trip of a lifetime to Australia, the blooding of even more quality young players, Old Trafford and the grand final victory again, the ladies and youth team success, the emotions and tears in saying goodbye to some real Wigan legends in Wayne, Tompkins and Bateman. Chris McEwen said, it was alright, I suppose. Similarly understated, Pete Stott said it was gradual.
Yeah, fair point.
Joshua Reardon simply had to say about the season, championes, with lots of exclamation marks. And then finally, my good friend John Cassidy always has an interesting take on things that he wants me to read out whenever he does contribute to the Super League pod. He said, slow, steady and nervous start, slowly picking up the pace and intensity with a good climax at the end, in brackets, with Saints having blown their load ages ago.
Well, innuendo bingo there.
There you go. The Cassidy scorecard has been ticked off. So, with that in mind, let's go through the 2018 season. I think we'll break it into three sections, David, really, is how this Wigan season can be broken down. So the early season through spring showed us that Wigan, had glimpses of what it could take to be a championship side. So despite a champion side. Despite a narrow loss at St Helens on Good Friday, there was the comeback away at Catalan, there was the tight win at Leeds with Tompkins' magical drop goal, and the home hammering of Castleford, then the outstanding defeat of Warrington at Magic. That kind of sums up for me phase one of the season. How did you find the early goings of the season?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a strange one, wasn't it? Obviously, I think a lot of the focus was on the trip to Australia that was already mentioned. So, we got underway with a great win at Salford, who defied quite a few people's expectations. Obviously, we had the trip to Australia and the victory against Hull as well. But yeah, if you sort of couple that with a few blips along the way, so the loss at Warrington, Good Friday, breaking that sort of duck that we've seem to have had for a while with Wayne. So yeah, the early season was a bit of a mixed bag, sort of convincing against the lower teams. Huddersfield and Hull KR put some big scores against them. Nice win against Catalan as well. So Yeah, I think it was kind of setting the tone for the rest of the season, really. It was a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, well, Wigan actually scored 40 or more points 3 times in that initial period of the season, which Wigan only did 2 times in total in 2017. So there were signs of greater attacking things to come, but also, worrying that the 2 losses came against 2 of our closest rivals, both geographically and in the silverware contention. But that Magic Weekend win was kind of absolutely massive, and Wigan were phenomenal on that day, 38-10, and it, how much we were all buzzing as Wigan fans that night in Newcastle, until news started to filter through over the Sunday and the Monday, and before it was announced then that Sean Wayne would be leaving the club, and that led to phase 2 of the season. So things really did slip after Wayne's announcement, but it also coincided with Wigan's typical early summer away run of games. Wigan lost 5 in 8 in that period. 4 of those losses came away from home. There was the home loss as well to St Helens, which hurt. How did you find that stage of the season? Did you think that it was ever going to get good again?
Oh, do you know what? I mean, like you said, the Magic Weekend, the performance was probably not just the best performance, at that stage of the season, but it's probably one of the best performances we've had for a couple of years in terms of, the finishing. Defence was conceded a few points, but it was almost a perfect performance. And then, as you said, there was rumours sort of swirling round. All the sort of media were dropping hints about a big bombshell, some big news coming up, and then obviously the news broke. And then, you just sort of, everything after that seemed to be a struggle for a little while, didn't it? We sort of had a bit of a honeymoon with a couple of wins, but then it also, everything sort of started to fall apart. The performances dipped, there were players looking around, and obviously that uncertainty of not only Wayne leaving, but also with, who's next, who is out there, and I think that sort of led to a lot of uncertainty with the fans as well, because sort of looking at the longer term picture, we had no idea what was to come.
Yeah, the wins that did come other than against Leeds is a very demoralised Leeds side at the time. The wins that did come in that stage were small, narrow margin wins, scrappy wins away at Hull FC with a very kind of lucky bounce back up the crossbar and setting up a try. The win against Warrington at home, which again was a last second drop goal really, and there was being dumped out to Warrington in the cup, nilled in that stage. Were you say there was nervousness around and question marks around the fan base? Were you one of those who were concerned that the glory times might not return this year?
It certainly puts it in. It certainly puts it into perspective. I mean, even in the last few years when we've been successful, the 2016 season, we've had these blips in that form. And obviously, I think the one thing that got us through 2016 to winning the grand final was the players and putting the bodies on the line for Wayne. And then you sort of think, are they going to put the bodies on the line for him, knowing that he's not even going to be there next season? And there's, obviously then there was all sorts of speculation around Bateman, around Tompkins as well, which added fuel to the fire at that stage. So I'd be lying if I said I was confident we'd be having a good season following that blip.
Well, you didn't need to worry, David, because Wigan closed the season out with 10 successive wins, which started in round 23 of the regular season, ran all the way through the Super 8s, Wigan taking care of the whole top 8 and the playoff semi-final and the grand final. So, there was imposing wins away in that period over the Cup winners Catalan and the League Leaders Shield winners St Helens. They were a sign maybe of things to come. Wigan dominated the semi-final, and then there was the grand final, which was a 12-4 win, but it maybe felt like it was always going to be Wigan's day. As that period went through, scratchy to start off with wins over Catalan and Castleford at home in that spell, but then Wigan's defence really started to stop teams scoring. No team scored more than 2 tries against Wigan in a game after that stage. So how were you then growing in confidence through to that semi-final and final?
I think there was a bit of a turning point. So for me, a turning point was, and I know you sort of said from round 23 onwards, I think it was around the time when Wigan sort of announced the fact that Lamb and Edwards were coming in. I think Sean Wayne I think we had a game that night and everything was sort of all geared around those 2 big names. and I think Sean Wayne likened it to a bit of a circus and was praising the players for for managing to focus and get the result at that point amid everything going on in the background. And for me, that was when it changed. And I think it was that a bit of a siege mentality, not from Wayne and the players against the rest of the league. I think it was Wayne siege mentality against everybody, including sort of the hierarchy at Wigan. I don't think we'll ever know what went on and where that decision reached, where Wayne thought, yeah, I've had enough now. But yeah. I think there's some unsettled, behind the scenes there, especially with the other coaching staff going as well. And I think at that point I kind of thought, I think he's onto something here, because like you said, the defence came back into it, the fire came back into it, Tompkins and Bateman and Sutton and the storylines around people leaving. And I think it galvanised the squad, and you sort of sense they were onto something special. And particularly with that run through the Super 8s, first ever team to go through the Super 8s unbeaten, dispatching teams and making teams look ordinary. Particularly the likes of Saints and nilling Castleford as well. It was a good time, and yeah, you could sense the confidence was there. And although Wigan have been known to end a few fairy tales at Old Trafford with Kieran Cunningham and James Graham and things like that, it kind of just felt like it was written for Wigan to go on and win there.
Yeah, it was great times, wasn't it? I mean, in that run to the grand final, key players started coming back as well. George Williams was back in the fold and starting to get back into form. Ryan Sutton and Ben Flower had missed some periods of games, and they were getting back into the side as well. So, and the emergence of Joe Greenwood, who was getting to fitness at that point and able to contribute on the field. So in terms of then looking back at the season, Warrington in the grand final will be the ultimate highlight, I suppose, and Don Manfredi's brace in that match. But other than that game, any particular standout moments in the season, and any standout individuals you want to pull out from your point of view?
I think standout moments, obviously we've already spoken about it. Magic Weekend was a particular high point. We always seem to face the top teams at Magic Weekend, whereas other teams seem to get a bit of a rub of the green of who they're playing against, and we'll go on to that, I'm sure. But
Liam Marshall doing Josh Charnley down the outside. That
yeah,
sort
definitely.
Of moment.
Yeah, definitely. But I think for me, I think John Bateman's an 8 out of 10 player every week, and we will miss him to an extent, but we've just got to play to our strengths. Like I said, Joe Greenwood came in and started making an impact and barnstorming runs and creating offloads for other people to score off, which, for John Bateman's work rate, is not known for his sort of sprints through, from halfway and setting tries up. So yeah, I think, but for me, Manfredi, that, to come in at the back end of the season after 2 years out and to perform as he did, in not only, in the grand final, but in the semi-final as well, it's testament to him. He's got a new 3-year deal, and for me, if he can keep fit now, he's going to be one of the best wingers in the league, and he's certainly in with a shout out top try scorer next season.
For sure, and he announced himself back by basically scoring the game sealing try at his return, didn't he? And then never looked back and didn't lose a single game in 2018. So that's a nice positive note to finish on, given that it's a player who's just re-signed for Wigan on an extended contract. That will take us into the off-season news conversation that I'm now going to have with Tom McCooey. So, Tom, welcome along to the Super League pod to talk about Wigan Rugby with both hats on, please. I want your Wigan fan and your Wigan sports reporter hats on for this, if that's okay.
Yeah, I can try and do that, no problem.
So, we're going to run through what's been going on in the off-season. It's probably a good time for us to touch base on Wigan, because all the off-season news has pretty much happened in the last 3 days.
Yeah, it's been pretty. Yeah, like you said, yesterday was the big one, really, wasn't it? And then again a little bit more today. So it's been quite exciting, really.
So we'll get to that through the sort of squad numbers is kind of the most interesting thing that's just happened. But first of all, just to cover off for people listening, the ins and outs at Wigan so far. So the outs are quite high profile. You've got Sam Tompkins, John Bateman and Sutton as well, Ryan Sutton out. And then the ins, Zach Hardacre, who everyone knows a lot about, Joe Bullock, to add to Greenwood and Hankinson, who came in as mid-season recruits during the year. And of those players, there's one that